Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, it feels like forever since I put out a video. It's been crazy recently between my career and being busy with work and everything that's going on, plus a move. As you can see, we're in a different location. I made a move recently from one area. It's kind of funny. I'm back in Mount Lebanon now. I moved into a new place and basically a new area to talk about Pitt football and college football in general. So it's going to be a lot of fun, guys. Again, hopefully this is a regular thing again now. Everything's getting back to normal. It's going to be a lot of fun, to say the least. Before we get back to the actual video, what we're going to be talking about today, great topics. One, please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe, like, and comment on the video as well, guys. I can't tell you how much I love the conversation with each and every one of you guys. Just in general about the topic about college football, Pitt football. Guys, next week is the beginning of fall camp. It's crazy. It feels like yesterday we were just finishing up the season. A new season is upon us and more topics, much more fun. There'll be plenty of stuff coming up here, especially player interviews during camp. It'll be really good for you guys. So please subscribe to the channel. Just right down below, subscribe, like, comment, and share the video. So, guys, welcome back. It's crazy. The first thing I actually wanted to talk about is a recap of the ACC Media Days. But in case anyone does not know, as expected, Yassin Willis, the running back out of New Jersey, has just committed to Pitt, the 4-star running back. So that'll be a great thing to talk about with you guys. We'll do another video on that. But to start the video off today, a recap of ACC Media Days. It's almost crazy. It feels like every ACC Media Days, there's more conference realignment intuitives that go on. It's crazy. It's almost every year is starting to become a theme, whether it's OU and Texas going to the SEC, the UCLA and UCLA and USC news going to the Big Ten. And then this week, obviously, we had Colorado going to the Big 12, and it seems like they're not going to be the only departure from the Big 12. But ACC Media Days, guys, Commissioner Jim Phillips really attacked the topic of the day, which is really the revenue gap. What does that look like in terms of, where does the ACC going, where they are now? From what he talked about, it's a collective group effort at this point. Okay. And I think that the schools are really intuitive to the point where they understand that the gap is there. There's no hiding that anymore at this point. I think it's really important to understand for the long term of the ACC, I think they are in a little bit of a jam. You can't have that much separation in the terms of the TV markets, but they're doing things, the small things right now to grow for the future, because the ACC media deal is really back-ended at this point to where they start getting $70 million towards 2030 and then 2031 and on. But guys, that's 7 years down the road. What can we do in the meantime? Commissioner Phillips talked about how the CW is the most recent one that recently just came on. That was a really good one. And I think the CW, it's not going to add a ton of value to the conference, but it's more exposure for the student athletes. I think that's really the biggest thing at this point. That's number one. But number two, he talked about how the schools are collectively coming together. Guys, you're going to hear, for instance, like Florida State, they're actively looking to get out of the conference. They have August till August 15th to put in a notice they're going to leave. I would be absolutely shocked if FSU puts anything in that says they're leaving. I think that what we saw in the spring, they pulled a power play in terms of putting together the success initiative to where if you do well in the athletics, whether it's football, basketball, the NCAA tournament, that extra money will not be distributed evenly. It'll go to the teams that are towards the top of the conference. I'm totally okay with that. I talked about that in numerous videos with you guys. I'm personally okay with that. And the 2021 school year, Pitt had the most revenue distribution-wise of $44 million over anybody else in the conference because they did well. I don't expect Pitt to drop from at least second or third when it comes to in terms of what performance looks like. I think Jeff Capel's done a hell of a job. I think it's going to continue to get better and better as the years go on. And I really do think that Pat Narduzzi really has built the football team where it's going now and in the future, where Pitt will be competing at the top of the ACC for years to come. Also, Commissioner Phillips talked about how the scheduling, obviously, there's no more Coastal and Atlantic divisions. It's one division now. It wouldn't have changed much anything in terms of who would have won the conference. I think that's shown statistically. It's always been the same two teams. That's not the big difference. I think what the conference does by eliminating divisions is the fact that now the ACC can potentially get more than one school in the college football playoff. I think a lot of other conferences are going to follow suit. Obviously, the Big 12 has been that way, and the Pac-12 have been that way as well in terms of one division. I would not be shocked to see the Big 10 bring that on here pretty soon. If I'm not mistaken, they announced that whether it's this year or next year, they're going to do one division. I think it was this summer. I think they start next year, not this year, in terms of what the scheduling looks like, and also one conference. The SEC recently voted on that to where there's still two divisions. You know, it is what it is at this point. I'm a little shocked by they did that. I think in a year or so, we'll probably see them make that move as well. And they'll have the 8 conference games still like the ACC. But when it comes to media days, guys, I love the questions that Pat Narduzzi got. When the more questions that you get, especially as a year starts, it shows you that there's a lot of people that are involved, but more importantly, they're paying attention to what the football team's doing. And I think Pat Narduzzi, we talked about it numerous times, 20 wins in 2 seasons, back-to-back rankings in the top 25 to end the season. Forget about starting the season, ending the season. That's what the one that really matters. And Pat Narduzzi has done that the past 2 consecutive seasons. Again, an ACC championship game. Pat Narduzzi now being to the ACC championship game 2 times, which is incredible, where in terms of they're the only team other than Clemson that have done that. So again, with Pat getting the questions, he talked about Phil Dracovic. Phil Dracovic was, he tried to say, look, I never named a starter or anything like that, but he did say that Phil Dracovic shouldn't be the starter. That's why he's down there in ACC Media Days. Also, Matthew Gonsalves, tremendous offensive lineman, will be a huge key this year, was also there as well. But also, too, defensive back MJ Devonshire was there as well. And you look at the defensive backs, MJ Devonshire, Marquez Williams, look at really your 2 starters. AJ Woods will be in there. I think out of the 3 of them, AJ Woods would be the fastest. I think the most aggressive cornerback out of all 3 of them is Marquez Williams. Certainly has the confidence for it. But MJ Devonshire, a guy that I think he has great speed, very physical, the Aliquippa kid, hometown hero. You got to love that, guys. And again, I think Pitt in general, just with the depth at defensive back, the veterans they have coming back this year, I think Donovan McMillan will put a good play in there as he develops this year. Stephen Hall, Javon McIntyre, those guys will do a hell of a job. P.J. O'Brien. You just look at the defensive backs, and then you got young guys like Rylan Gandy. He's going to probably get some time this year. So defensive back, they're going to look great. And Pat Narduzzi talked about that. He also talked about, the defensive line, over the last 4 consecutive years, 4 or 5 years. I mean, altogether cumulative, Pitt has the most sacks of anybody in college football, over Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, you name it. We talked about guys that could be stepping up this year. He talked about on the defensive end side of things, Dayon Hayes, Nakai Johnson. He thinks he's going to have a breakout year. He's been a guy that has been progressing to get to this point. I think it's going to look fantastic for him. I think he's going to do a hell of a job this year. But he also talked about different guys as well in terms of a guy like Bam Brema. Bam Brema has been developed over time and over years. And as you can see, his body has been transformed. If you go on Twitter to Charlie Partridge's recent tweet, the picture of Bam Brema has been incredible, to say the least. I mean, he's developed on the field, but physically, he is definitely a Power 5 defensive end. But also, too, he brought up Nate Temple, a guy like Nate Temple who's been hurt really as for the last couple of years consistently, hasn't been able to stay on the field consistently. That guy stays healthy. He's another one that's going to be out there. But also Samuel Okunlola. That's a guy, he's only going to be a redshirt freshman this year, but he has shown to he's been really progressing quickly. I mean, he came in and as a freshman, which again, guys, I'm big on, developing guys, especially as they're freshmen. It's hard to make that jump from high school to college, but he's a guy that just jumped on board quickly. He's a guy that didn't get a lot of time last year, but he saw spurts here and there. He was in a couple games here and there. Didn't burn his red shirt, but this year he's going to get a lot of playing time as well because he is that good. And then the inside, he also talked about Devin Danielson, Tyler Bentley, DeAndre Jules, Who else? Elliot Donald's going to be in the middle, but also too, Elliot can play really both inside and outside. That's how aggressive he is, athletic he is. That's always really good to see as well. So, and also, obviously, of course, David Green. David Green's going to be there in the middle as well. I think David's going to be a starter. I think just the knowledge of the defense and how aggressive he has been. Narduzzi talked about that as well. So, he talked about the scheduling. Obviously, you had the NIL comments where we talked about putting a lid on things. Guys, here's what he really meant when he talked about the comments, okay? And I want people to understand this. It's not just, he's not talking about, for instance, like the salary cap. Well, he talked about a little bit, well, there's big alumni basis, what they're doing here and what they're doing there. He's really not talking about that. He's talking about how the pay for play. Okay, so you're going to have, we've obviously experienced with USC. USC was one of those schools that came in late, 2 days before the portal closes and gets Jordan Addison to come out and get, offers him apparently $2.5-3 million. From what I've been told, he didn't get anywhere near that. That's one of the things too, is that these players are being bamboozled and they're accepting these deals, but there's no paperwork to go behind it, so they're not being paid everything. But still got Jordan Addison to come out of Pitt, where they tampered with him clearly. That's been speculated. There's been no proof to show that. But when all of us Pitt fans knew where he was going before he even hit the portal, you kind of know something happened. But he really talked about the pay for play. And I think that's what has to get under control. Pat Narduzzi has never been against players not getting paid. That's a proven fact, because guess what? How many tens of 20s, 30s of players on the Pitt roster are being paid currently? Okay, those are guys that are having they're true NIL deals. Pay for play is not NIL. That's getting someone to commit to your institution, but more importantly, through the transfer portal, getting someone to leave their roster and go somewhere else. We saw a recent report today about Talia Tagovailoa, who is a quarterback at Maryland, said he was offered $1.5 million from an SEC team to go somewhere else. Okay, and he was still on the roster. They asked him to leave his roster, go into the transfer portal. That's tampering, guys. I mean, when players talk about that, even Drake May talked about how, look, there's got to be a lid on it. There's got to be like a salary cap, like the National Football League, and I think that time's going to come where I think federal regulators get involved to make it an even playing field across the board, what things look like. I could care less about the cap, the salary cap, of how much guys can make or what the deals can look like. As long as they're true NIL deals, I don't care. You can make $20 million a year as a player. I could care less. It's the fact that where these collectives, and Deion Sanders even talked about this, the collectives get involved and they start paying players to attend the university and tampering. That kind of stuff is against the rules. That should not be there. So when you look at it overall, Pat Narduzzi is right. For the health of the sport, you want things to be even. You want things to be evenly played between all the schools and between all the conferences, okay? So from what Pat Narduzzi was saying, I think he said it poorly. Pat can be known to do that, stir up controversy, but then again, I really don't care because people are talking about Pitt. It's good publicity for Pitt, so what does it matter? So they're out there and people are talking about them. But you want guys to where, what Narduzzi's talking about is getting guys to do it the right way. NIL deals the right way. From organizations, whether it's nonprofits or volunteering, or the corporate America, where they're able to sponsor guys, whether it's products, advertising, marketing, do what you want, or the mom and pop shops. Those are the greatest things about the NIL that have proven the NIL has been way overdue. Guys, I was a student athlete at a time too, where I played Division III baseball, certainly not Division I, anything like that. But you know what? I'd have loved to got extra money from people to pay to pay for my meals, at least something like that. That would have been awesome. So for me personally, going through the system, I would have loved to at least been able to make some money. That'd have been pretty nice. But that's what Pat meant. It's just to pay for play. It's not just, well, players can't make all this money, all that kind of stuff. If there's one guy in the college football that truly would coach for free, it would probably be Pat Narduzzi. Okay, so he talked about to numerous players how he turned down jobs where he was, offered millions of dollars to go be a defensive coordinator somewhere else other than Michigan State, but he stayed put out of loyalty. But also too, there's other places were not like Michigan State. And that's what he's teaching these guys. So I completely agree with what he's saying, because even though he said it horribly, It's what he was referring to, and that's pay for play. So Pat Narduzzi's right, and obviously I love the article that came out recently in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm drawing a blank on the journalist, obviously, but he does a hell of a job for Pitt. He was there on ACC Media Days as well. I quoted him in a tweet. Hell of an interview by him. It was incredible reading that interview and just talking about questions and what he was going through. But it leads us into another topic that happened during the ACC Media Days, and that's the Big 12, the Big 12 going to the Big 12 going to get Colorado. Okay, Colorado now officially between a vote unanimously, whether it's in their university or with the Big 12, they both unanimously voted to add Colorado to the Big 12. I think this is more of a big deal for the Pac-12 than it is the Big 12. The Big 12 grabbed a school that was 1-11 last year, guys. It's not a big thing. The biggest thing that I think that should happen is that the Colorado AD should be getting a raise because he hired Deion Sanders when most of the other schools didn't want to do because he had no experience anywhere else. We thought for plenty of years that Florida State was going to grab Deion Sanders, obviously his alma mater. Me personally, I think with him going to Colorado, if Deion Sanders does well at Colorado, I think eventually, if that time comes, if Mike Norvell doesn't continue to produce at Florida State, I think you see Deion Sanders take that job there or somewhere in the SEC, to be quite honest with you. But it's a big move in terms of the Big 12, bringing in another face where it's really important that they brought in a guy that is very vocal all over ESPN. Obviously, ESPN, the only one that put it on prime time with College Game Day announcers who were there. Kirk Herbstreit, people like that were there, obviously, for their spring game. Colorado has sold out many of their games this year because pre-sale because of Deion Sanders. So in the meantime, it's a good ad if you're looking to create eyeballs to come to the Big 12. But do I see Deion Sanders staying there for the long term? I really don't. I really see Deion Sanders going somewhere else where it's a bigger institution, somewhere in a different conference. But that's what I really see overall. Okay. I think the Pac-12 is in a lot of trouble, guys. I think that, you lost USC, you lost UCLA, now you lost Colorado. And from what all intents and purposes, that's what's coming out today, is more than likely Arizona is going to go too in this cycle. Next cycle, there could be two more schools going, whether it's Arizona State and Utah, probably. I think Oregon and Washington are waiting for that Big Ten invite if it comes. If it doesn't, we'll see what else they do. But we'll see what happens down the road. But I think the Big 12 will continue to add. They're certainly doesn't put them towards the SEC or the Big 10 or anything like that. I can tell you that. The third best conference, still in my opinion, is the ACC because there are much bigger brands in the ACC. The ACC has won national championships in the college football era. Obviously, TCU went to the national championship game last year, but they got absolutely blasted on national television and embarrassed by Georgia. Wasn't much of a game at all. Was never really even competitive at any point. But they had TCU in there. But when you look at teams, for instance, that spend money, like they're going to the college football playoff and actually have the goal for a national championship, and the ACC, in my opinion, especially in the NIL era, it's obviously number 1 Clemson, number 2 Florida State, and number 3 Miami. We'll see what Miami does. They have a long road to get back to where they need to go, but they certainly spend and they certainly recruit like they're going to go to a national championship. We'll see what Mario Cristobal does. I think give him a couple more years, 3 years, you'll see that team really start to sparkle a little bit. But overall, guys, especially when it comes to the ACC and conference realignment in general, I think people need to understand that you're going to hear Florida State, for instance. They're going to say, well, for instance, recently they talked about how potentially they're going to try to put a motion in that they're going to leave the conference by August 15th so they can join a conference next year. Guys, everything that I've been told, and I've talked about this numerous times, I do not see Florida State leaving the conference anytime soon. Okay, it's to leave the conference between the ACC buyout and the grant of rights. It's $500 to $700 million, somewhere in that range. No school has that. No school can do that. So when you look at this, you're going to hear noise for the next 5 to 10 years from Florida State. Could there be a potential down the road where like 2028 comes or 2029? I think so, because if there's no renegotiation on the table, like for instance, people talk about, well, the only thing that can really save the ACC at this point would be Notre Dame. Adding Notre Dame would be great. But here's the reality of it. Notre Dame takes pride on being independent. That's a fact. Okay. I don't see Notre Dame adding to any conference because I think when the college football playoff starts to come along, I don't think the Pac-12 will be a Power 5 anymore. So you go from the Power 5 conference champions, and then one group of 5. So that's 6. So you have 6 other open spots. I think it comes down to 5. We'll see what the other 2 conferences do if they stay competitive. We'll see what happens. But I think overall, Notre Dame loves to be independent. That's just who they are. That's in their fabric. It's in their fan base. I just don't see them adding football to any conference. That's just my opinion. I know ACC fans would love to have that happen. And there's some Big Ten fans that think they're going to add into the Big Ten. I think there would be more of a relationship to where, unless there's a very sweetheart deal that they went into the ACC, but I think if Notre Dame was ever to go into a conference, it would more than likely be the Big Ten because of just the money aspect of it, potentially even more money because adding Notre Dame would obviously add that much more money. But overall, guys, conference realignment's here to stay. The Pac-12 will continue to add or subtract. More than likely subtract. We'll see what they do on adding teams. It looks horrendous right now. But I think at this point, we can expect the conference realignment is here to stay. And you're going to see the ebbs and flows of things. I think potentially the Big Ten, if money's there, they're going to try to add Oregon and Washington if the money's there. Last time they tried to do something last year, ESPN obviously left the Big Ten, but Fox and CBS said, look, we don't have the money, guys. So Oregon and Washington get invited to the Big Ten anytime soon. Right now, looks unlikely because there's not any money added extra. And when there's no extra money added to adding teams, you're just cutting more into the pie. And the Big Ten doesn't want to do that. So we'll see what that looks like. But overall, the ACC Media Days, the excitement, the blossom, college football is really almost back. We got a couple days. I think Pitt comes back. They open up camp on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, Thursday or Friday, I think, which would be August 3rd or August 4th. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Plenty more videos to come, guys. Again, thank you guys for tuning in today. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. Please, again, like, subscribe. Just down below here, just subscribe to the channel. Get all the updates. Things are going to come quickly. Plenty more information coming out as soon as possible. Again, thank you guys again for supporting the channel. Please subscribe, like, comment, share with your friends. Love to hear from you guys soon. It's always been a pleasure. And again, as always and forever, Hail to Pitt. I'll see you guys.